On March 18, 1990, two men dressed as police officers entered the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum in Boston. We have been told that they imprisoned the guards and left with 13 works of art. Since then, there has been false lead after false lead. In 2014, the FBI held a huge press conference announcing that they had solved the case, but the perpetrators were dead, no paintings found. It remains a mystery of the art world, most recently explored in the Netflix documentary, This is a Robbery. This investigation has been stalled for over 3 decades. It is time to look at the flawed and deceptive police work. I know the thieves, and I briefly worked for Holly at the museum in the days after the theft. I was at the museum and I saw what they did. The FBI is lying. There were only 10 works of art stolen. There was no etching of Rembrandt titled Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man in the collection. The picture shown is actually at the Rijksmuseum in the Netherlands. The Gardner Museum was unusual in that the art was to be shown exactly the way Isabella had left it. They did not have this Rembrandt portrait in 1924. Have it when the museum was broken into on March 18, 1990. At least 2 of the Degas drawings were also faked after the theft and were never stolen. On March 19, 1990, a press conference was called outside the museum. At the last minute, shortly before the press conference, the FBI decided to release the false information that a small self-portrait etching of Rembrandt was taken too, as well as several Degas. Perhaps it was done as an investigation tactic, to be able to separate out real information from the false. A photocopy was made of a modern-day print of the Rijksmuseum's etching and deliberately smudged so that people would not realize the image was of the same etching. It was given the false date. It was attached to the board outside. It is the small rectangle 4th from the left in the top row. I drew 2 of the Degas pieces. The third may be an actual Degas, or it might have been made by a curator. Some commenters have misunderstood what is in contention. They have said that an etching is a print, so it is not surprising that more than one museum would have a copy. Yes, an etching is a print. It would not be surprising if Isabella Stewart Gardner had a copy of the same print as the one in the Rijksmuseum and had displayed it in her museum. Yet, it remains that she did not buy a copy of the print and she did not display it in her museum. There is no mention of it in any catalog prior to the night of the robbery. The Gardner Museum is unusual in that according to her will, nothing was to be added or taken from the collection, or the entire museum would be sold and the proceeds given to Boston College. Aside from minor renovations, on the day of the robbery, the museum was essentially unchanged from when Isabella had died. There is no mention of the purported previous robbery of the piece in 1970 in any Boston newspaper or any Boston Police Department reports. In some criminal investigations, police have given out false details to the public in order to weed out that segment of the population who falsely confess to others' crimes. Possibly that is the police tactic the FBI decided to implement. While at the time that might have been a good police practice, in the years since we have learned quite a bit about false confessions and false memories. People often can be made to say what the police wish them to say. The criminal also may have thought that the other thief had pocketed the etching without informing him. Unfortunately, the investigation may have ruled out people who really were involved in the crime because they claimed they had seen the small Rembrandt etching as well. For example, Robert V. Gentile claimed he had seen it in the hands of Eline Garenti. It has been 35 years. The investigation is completely stalled. We need to look at it with fresh eyes. If we pare away the falsehoods surrounding the crime, falsehoods that I believe are more appropriate to a cover-up than an investigation, we may be able to return the paintings to the Gardner Museum. I am calling for both the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum and the FBI to acknowledge that only 10 artworks were stolen. I am calling for them to publish their reports on the investigation and the evidence. The Boston FBI, now in Chelsea, Massachusetts, has a terrible history of corruption. John Connolly, John Morris and 18 other agents were convicted of crimes involving Whitey Bulger and his gang. I wish we could say that was all in the past. I call on Massachusetts Governor Healey to appoint a special auditor to investigate the Isabella Stewart Gardner theft. People outside of Boston may be unaware that the Boston office of the FBI was extremely corrupt during this period. FBI agent John Connolly, FBI agent John Morris, and others in the FBI had close relationships with mob boss Whitey Bulger, an FBI informant convicted of 11 murders and believed to have been involved in 19 murders. The FBI hid Whitey's crimes in exchange for information. John Connolly was eventually convicted of murder himself. John Connolly was at the Gardner Museum in the days after the theft, intimidating witnesses. Connolly's close friend FBI agent Edward Quinn was also involved in the investigation. The Boston Globe's article, Inch by Inch, Hunt for Clues goes on March 21, 1990 details how he was at Catholic Mass Sunday morning when his beeper went off calling him to the scene of the robbery. It is recounted in Ulrich Boser's book The Gardner Heist as well. In 2015, 25 years after the heist, the Boston Globe called for the FBI to open its files on the Isabella Stewart Gardner theft. They did not. It's time to re-examine this case from the beginning and get these World Heritage masterpieces returned to the museum. I too call for the FBI to open its files. So too should the Boston police. We need transparency on this case. We need sunshine. In the days after the theft, Anne Hawley, the director of the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum, was distraught. She thought that the theft would mean the museum would close and all the pieces would be sold, with the resulting money going to Harvard University, because of the terms of Isabella Stewart Gardner's will. She and everyone else working for the museum would be out of a job. She also thought that because the FBI museum with no ticket sales, she would not even be able to meet payroll. She was very distrustful of the FBI, and it had even crossed her mind that someone with the FBI had been taking the large Rembrandt self-portrait out the door on the 19th, when it was found by my mother on the floor of the Spanish Room. On March 19, 1990, shortly before the press conference, Director Hawley and the FBI decided to say that the landscape with an obelisk by Rembrandt was attributed to another Dutch painter in order to lessen the blow to the trustees for the museum. It would lower the total value of the theft. They also wanted to make the robbers seem incompetent and make it less likely for any potential buyer to trust them. They hoped that it would keep the paintings in the area. The authenticity of Rembrandt paintings is a constant conflict. As early as 1931, an art expert authenticated only 4 Gardners for Rembrandts. I believe it was Christ in the Storm on the Sea of Galilee, although the New York Times only put up a brief list with the count of 1 in the museum's line. In 1985, the landscape with an obelisk was included in Gary Schwartz's book Rembrandt, His Life, His Painting, published by Viking, as were the other Rembrandt Project. A group of experts who authenticated Rembrandts had downgraded paintings at the Gardner and other museums, but has lost some credibility over the past decades. Paintings that they dismissed as being created by others in his studio have been proven to be by Rembrandt through X-rays and other novel imaging techniques. The Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum had still attributed all 4 paintings to Rembrandt on the day of the theft. To keep this subterfuge going, in later years the FBI and the museum asked other experts to promote the fiction that the landscape with an obelisk was not by Rembrandt, including Cynthia P. Schneider, Ph.D., former assistant curator of European paintings at the Museum of Fine Arts, who was rewarded with a posting as ambassador to the Netherlands 1998. The paper that she supposedly published detailing this does not exist. Neither does the false Boston Globe article which covers its publication. Only a headline appears if you attempt to search for it.